Now, I've designed this session with two two types of people in mind. It's either for business leaders who want to become more confident presenters themselves, or for HR people or people in L&D, sometimes sales leaders or those who lead teams and they are responsible for the development of their teams. And for those who want to develop a team of confident, effective presenters, if you are in one of those two categories, then you are in the right place. And you see, a presentation is a bit like a first date. It's an opportunity to make a great first impression. And the problem I see is that so many people in companies make the big mistake of making an invisible first impression when presenting. So it's not that they make a bad first impression, although sometimes they do, but often they don't make a good first impression either. It's just invisible. And we want to change that. And that's what we are going to do today. So by the end of this session, you'll have a very good understanding of how you can be more visible and effective and impactful when presenting your ideas. And just a couple of house rules here on Zoom. Now you'll see I'd love for this session to be as interactive as possible. This is going to be a dynamic dialogue. So there are a couple of things we can all do. Most of you, I can see you, which is great. Just in case, like with camera, for me, like the camera on is very, very welcome. That's the best thing we can do to have a good connection with each other. Also, from time to time, I'm going to ask you some questions. And every time I do, there is no right or wrong answer. Please use the chat box here on Zoom. Let me know what you think, share your ideas, and that way we'll make it more interactive. And I'm planning to talk for about half an hour so that we've got some time at the end for any questions. And here is my first question to you. Let me know in the chat when it comes to presenting or public speaking, in just one brief sentence, don't overthink it. What's your number one challenge? Let me know in the chat your number one challenge when it comes to presenting or public speaking. Again, either for yourselves or for your teams. Remember, there's no right or wrong answer. This comes from your experience. Max is saying knowing how to read your audience when it's not a group you are used to working with or presenting to. Perfect. Yep. And by the way, Max, what I find, for example, is that reading a room is always a challenge. When it comes to giving virtual presentations, as I'm doing now, it's even harder to be able to read the room, understand their interest. Josie, convincing people not to have a presentation that's just walls of text. Yeah, tell me about it. We've been trying Josie for 16 years, but I still see 99% of presentations, the typical death by PowerPoint. Yeah. So maybe we failed from that perspective. Sarah, I hear others have anxiety that affects the breath and vocal projection. Absolutely. Now, the reason why I asked the question is because it's important to understand what the challenges are so we can fix them. And if you want to fix them, if you really want to improve your, again, for yourselves, for your colleagues, for your teams, your ability to present and communicate your ideas, that you need to look at 5 principles. You need to master 5 principles. There are 5 key principles for powerful presentations, and that's what we're going to look at today. Before we do, just a super quick intro from my side. My name is Andrea. I'm the head of a company called Ideas on Stage UK. I'm a presentation coach. We specialize in working with business owners, leaders, and the teams who want to become more confident presenters. In the last 16 years, we've worked with thousands of clients around the world, including business leaders from organizations like eBay, Spotify, Salesforce, Amazon, and over 500 TEDx speakers. Our mission is to stop great ideas from failing just because of the way they are presented. And our vision is to help hundreds of thousands of business leaders inspire their audiences, increase their influence, and make a positive impact in the world. And that's it. Enough about me. We are here to talk about 5 principles, and here they are. Now, remember this word, score. You want to score when you give a presentation, like in football. Now, SCORE stands for these 5 principles here: simple, clear, original, related. We'll see what that means, and enjoyable. Now, in half an hour, I want to respect your time. So, most likely, we won't have time to explore each of these 5 principles in detail. But what we can do is let's make sure that at the very least, we cover 3 of them. So, my plan is to cover simple, clear, and related. But then, of course, if you have any questions on the other 2 principles, I'm here for you in the Q&A at the end. And before we get started with the first principle, I want to make sure that we are all aligned. Also, Max, going back to what you mentioned, being able to read the room virtually. Can you give me a quick exclamation mark in the chat if we are all ready to get started with the first principle? Just a quick exclamation mark in the chat if that's the case. And in the meantime, I'm looking at Christina's comment from before, being clear and concise without slides overcrowded with data. Perfect. Cool. Okay, we are ready to go. Principle number 1, clear. Simple. What did I say clear? Simple. Clear is number 2. Now, as a presenter, you want to be able to simplify your message. Now, for example, if you think about writing, books, articles, emails, blogs, all experienced writers know that the key to great writing is not in what they say, it's in what they don't say. The more they remove, the better the book, the better the article, the better the email. And the same is true with your presentations. Again, thinking about Christina's comment, being clear and concise. Concise is a key word there. The same is true with your presentations. Often what I see is, and that's a very common mistake, that we know so much about a subject and we are so close to it that we think that everything is important. So we think that we need to communicate everything. Isn't that true? But put yourselves in your audience's shoes. If everything is important, then nothing is important. If everything is important, nothing is. We worked with a client, Luc Breton, great presenter, and he always liked to say, I only remember one thing from a pitch or presentation. Just tell me what I need to know. No more. One thing. Have you ever thought about this? What's your one thing? Think about your next presentation, or think about one of your typical presentations, typical audiences. What's your one thing? If you were to summarize the core idea behind your next presentation in one message, what would you say? And how would you say it in a maximum of 70 words? That's it. 30 seconds. I can promise you. If you can communicate your message in that time, then you can communicate it in a longer format. If not, your message isn't simple enough. So give it a try. After the session, think about your next presentation. How can you summarize the core idea behind it in a maximum of 70 words? And if you get stuck, if you don't know what to say, try and follow this format. What? So what? What next? Here is how it works. First of all, you want to tell the audience the what. What's the one thing? What's the key idea? What's the one thing they need to remember, understand, or take away from your presentation? And that's important, but it's not enough. By the way, that's another very common mistake I see. Most presenters stay at this level, the what level. The audience doesn't know something, we tell them something, we share some information. That's important, but it's not enough. We need to go down. So what? Tell them, why should they care? Why is your message important and relevant to them, to your audience, not to you as the presenter? And then, what next? Okay, now that they care, Now that they understand why this is important to them, what do you want them to do after your presentation? What do you want them to do after your training course? Or at the very least, what do you want them to think, to believe, to feel as a result of your presentation? And you see, that's one way, it's not the only way, but that's one way for you to simplify your message. Remember, you can create a paragraph, maximum 70 words in total, that follows this format. What? So what next? Out of curiosity, on a scale from 0 to 10, where 0 means that if you think about this idea of simplifying your message, and this is self-assessment, 0 means that you find it very hard to do that, to simplify your message. 10 means that you find it very easy to do that. Give me your self-assessment in the chat. It could be anything in between. 7, Rosie, Sarah, 8. Love to hear from Christina and Max as well. Christina, 6. I thought so, Christina, also thinking about your challenge, the main challenge that you mentioned earlier. And Max, if you want, feel free to type your self-assessment as well. Now, this was the first principle. You want to be able to simplify your message. That's not enough. You also need to be able to create a clear structure, a clear storyline. Now, here's the thing. Depending on your audience and what they need, depending on what you're trying to achieve, the context, there are certain clear structures that work better than others. Again, today, we don't have time to go through all the different possibilities that you have. But if there's one thing I would really like you to take away, and by the way, it might be something that you know already, but it doesn't matter. We need to make sure that we apply this idea in our own communication. And this is the idea. And I have a question for you. Let me know in the chat. What do you think is the most powerful number in communication? Type a number in the chat. What's the most persuasive number in communication? Josie says 3, Max 3, Sarah 3. Of course, 3 is a magic number. Why? Because if you look at how brain works, then we realize that first of all, the human mind likes groups of 3. And also, whether we like it or not, all of us find it very hard to remember more than roughly 3 things, 3 chunks of information. So I don't care, please trust me, nobody does. Whether you have 12 reasons or 27 reasons or 1,000 reasons why they should listen to you, or believe in your ideas, or buy your products or services, or support your projects, just give them 3. That's what people can remember. So your clear structure could be as simple as a quick and interesting introduction that catches your audience's attention. Then you communicate your 3 key messages, and then a powerful conclusion, making it very clear to your audience what your point was and why they should care about it. If you are not doing this today, if you're not paying attention to the way you structure your presentations, you are making it hard for your audience to follow you, remember what you say, and do anything and take action. And if that's the objective sometimes, that's why this principle is so useful. By the way, just in case some of you is not familiar with it, this is called the rule of 3. You can Google it. It's not something that I made up. The rule of 3, which is one of the simplest and most powerful principles in communication. Before we continue, can you type again another exclamation mark in the chat if you can see, either if you are already applying this principle in your own presentations, or if you can see how you can apply it in your very next presentation. If that's the case, a quick, I see Max, for example, Sarah. Okay, perfect. That's great to hear. Christina as well. Okay, now I'm going to share the third principle as well. Before I do, just in case anyone is interested, if you are interested in these ideas, stay tuned, because at the end of this session, I'll give you the opportunity to express your interest in a complimentary presentation consultation, which is a 1-hour conversation with me, but I'll give you more information later. For now, let's continue with another principle related. What does this mean? Now, let's say that in a couple of weeks, you need to give a presentation. And I say presentation, it could be a workshop, a training course. You need to communicate some ideas. And let's say that today you start working on it. So let's assume that today is the day that you start preparing a presentation that you need to give in a couple of weeks from now. Where would you start? What's the first thing you normally do when you start preparing a presentation? And please, before you type anything in the chat, don't tell me what you know you should do. Don't tell me what you think you should do. Please be honest. Let me know in the chat what's the first thing you normally do when you start preparing your presentations in just one brief sentence. Max, determine the purpose and the objective of my presentation. Thank you, Max. Sarah, gather information from the participants to work out needs. Perfect. What else? Just giving it a few more seconds in case there are any other thoughts in the chat. Either, yeah, I've got Christina. I would add to that who is my audience and the goal of the presentations. Now, I love all these answers because no one said I just open up PowerPoint and put together some slides. Let me see, Josie, for when I'm teaching training, I like to build a deck as a template. For other presentations like this, I start by doing a brainstorm. So you see, in maybe in some contexts for you, you're not alone, by the way, Josie. That's what most people do. They start with, I say PowerPoint, it could be any other presentation tool. And we know that this is not the very first thing we want to do. But for example, Max, you said determine the purpose, the objective of my presentation, which is great, excellent. That's much, much better than just opening up the presentation tool. But even that is not the very first thing we want to do. Now, for example, as Sarah and Christina mentioned, they start to think about participants, audience. That should be always the first step. When you give a presentation, you are communicating with someone. So we need to start with them. When you give a presentation, it's their presentation, not yours. It's always the audience's presentation. Now, think of a presentation as a present. If I want to give you a present, it's your present, not mine. So I need to make sure that I know you so that I can buy something that you like. A presentation is very similar. When you give people a presentation, it's their presentation, not yours. So you need to make sure that you know your audience definitely before you open up PowerPoint, but also before you start thinking about your objective, what you want to say, because that depends on the audience. Now, in practice, let me see, Christina, I also do some research and if possible, talk with a couple of people. That's excellent, great approach. In practice, how can you do that? I'm going to share with you my own approach. This is what, in case it helps, this is what I do in terms of audience analysis in preparation for any presentation. See if it's useful. I always start with what we call the ABC of preparation: audience, burning needs, context, ABC, which means that before you do anything else, you need to take some time and ask yourself some questions on these three key things. A, audience. Who are the key people in the audience? Also, burning needs. Okay, what do they really need? What do they expect from your presentation? What challenges do they have? How do these challenges relate to your activities? Do they have any concerns about your activities you may want to know? And also context. For example, how much time do you have? Is it in person? Is it online? If it's online, okay, how many people will be there? Again, if it's online, how and when are you planning to interact with your audience? So contexts are more logistical or contextual questions. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that if you don't do that, then you can't create a great presentation. You can. But the risk is that you develop a fantastic presentation, but for the wrong audience. For example, some time ago, we worked with a client. Her name is Marie from Paris. Marie is an executive. She's an expert in leadership. Sarah, you are a leadership coach, leadership and performance coach. Yeah. So she's an expert in leadership as well. And she was invited by an association in Finland to give a talk about leadership. And she was super excited. It was one of her first international speaking opportunities. So she prepared really well. She knew her message. She told us, some of you were talking about slides at the beginning with the main challenges. She prepared 50 beautiful slides, no death by PowerPoint. She also practiced, so she was ready to go. She flew to Finland the day before the conference, then arrived there on the day, half an hour before the audience, because she wanted to make sure that she had time to set things up. And when she was about to connect her laptop to the screen, she realized that there was no screen. So, a bit of panic, she went and asked the organizers, assuming that they would say, "Oh, sorry, Marie, now we're going to fix this for you." But what they did instead was they started laughing. They started laughing. So she says, "Why are you laughing?" And they say, "Look, Marie, you want to show 50 slides, but actually, you've been invited to give a talk to the Association in Finland of Blind People." Blind people. Now, I know it's an extreme example. It sounds like a bad joke. It happened for real. Now, you see, Marie was very well prepared, apart from one thing. She didn't know her audience. She didn't even take the time to translate the name of the association from Finnish to French, and she would have realized that perhaps there was no need to have 50 beautiful slides. So, what does this mean for you? If you want to, you should want to make sure that your next presentations, and Josie, you were talking about, I guess if I understood well, training courses, workshops, if you want to make sure that they are related, which means relevant to them, the very first thing you need to do before thinking about your objective or PowerPoint or even what you want to say, you need to start with them, and you need to do it in a comprehensive way. And the ABC framework allows you to do just that. Remember, ABC: audience, burning needs, context. Again, just out of curiosity, can you type in the chat either one or two? One means that now that we went through this principle and what it means, type one if yes, regardless of your previous answer. Type one if that's what you do. You do start with the audience. That's the very first thing you do all the time. Type two instead if either no you don't, you tend to start by doing something else, or now that we went through this principle, still type two if you think that perhaps this kind of audience analysis that you could do it in a more comprehensive way. Either one or two in the chat. Let me know. 01, cool. Also Christina, perfect. And also for Josie and Max, feel free to let me know. Okay, remember we looked at 3 principles. Also, I see Max 1, Josie 1, perfect. We are aligned here. Now, we looked at 3 principles. There are 5 in total. Remember, you want to score when you give a presentation. Simple, clear, original, related, and enjoyable. Simple because the more you say, the less they remember. So you need to keep it short, simple, and to the point. Clear because your key messages should be obvious to everyone, including you as the presenter. Often that's not the case. Original because you want your presentations to stand out, to be a bit different, so that they'll pay more attention and remember it for longer. Related because it's their presentation, not yours. So you need to make sure that what you say is useful and relevant to them, to your audience. And then enjoyable. Well, of course, if your audience enjoys your talks, your presentations, your workshops, again, they'll pay more attention, they'll remember more, and maybe they'll do what you want them to do. They'll take action. And if that's the objective sometimes, that's why this framework is so useful. Now, before we close, out of curiosity again, if you think about everything we've discussed, let me know in the chat, what's your one thing? What's the one, what was most useful for you? What's the one thing you're taking away from this session? As always, in just one brief sentence, it could be anything, an idea, an insight, a comment, maybe something that you knew, but hopefully it was a good refresher for you. Could be something that now you've decided to apply in your own situation. Max, for example, getting a clear framework to prepare a presentation. Sarah, breaking down the process into clear structure. Perfect. It could be something that now you've decided to stop doing in your very next presentations. Okay, perfect. Now, I'm happy to take any questions. Let me see. We've got more than 15 minutes. Perfect. Happy to take any questions. Christina is saying following the principles and simplicity. Before we do the Q&A, let me just take a couple of minutes to tell you a little bit more about what we do and how it might be able to help. Now, it's very simple. Most business leaders and professionals, whether they are aware of it or not, struggle to present their ideas effectively. So at Ideas on Stage, we've created a program that helps you do just that. So, and by the way, when you do it, when you present a compelling message every time, then your audience will understand your ideas, they will believe in them, they will agree with them, they will act on them, they will remember them. So if this speaks to you, or in general, if you enjoyed this session, and if you'd like to learn a little bit more about how what we talked about today could work for you or your teams, then at the moment I have an opportunity for a few complimentary consultations to see if there's a fit between what you may be looking for and what we have to offer. And regardless of whether or not there's a good fit, I can promise you that if you attend the consultation, you'll go away with much greater clarity on how you and all your teams, your colleagues can become more effective presenters. And you'll also go away with a free copy of my book, Confident Presenter, just for agreeing to have a chat. If you're interested, very simple, feel free to type 121 in the chat, either in the public chat, or if you prefer, I see already a couple in the private chat. Some people prefer to express their interest privately. Now, just to clarify, if you type 121, you are not committing to anything. You're just telling me that you'd like to learn a little bit more about what the consultation is about. If that's the case, I will get in touch after this session. I will give you all the information. And then if together we see that it makes sense to go ahead, then we'll go ahead and find the time to speak. And also, in case you haven't seen it yet, this is the Confident Presenter Scorecard. The link is in the chart. There's also a QR code here. It's a free tool that allows you to assess your current presentation skills against the 5 principles we covered today. You just need to answer a few questions, yes or no. It takes less than 3 minutes, and it will give you a score from 0 to 100% on each of the 5 principles and a total score as well. And it also identifies opportunities for improvement. And when you take the scorecard, then you can get instant access. You can also claim your free copy of my book, Confident Presenter. And potentially, there's one more thing I'd like to share with you, but I can do that later. For now, I'd be very, very happy to take any questions. What questions do you have? And at this point, by the way, up to you, feel free to either type your questions in the chat if you have any, or even better for me, if you want to unmute yourselves, feel free to do that and we have a bit of a chat.
Hey, Andrea. Thanks for the presentation. I did have one question related to one of the 5 points, which was enjoyable. And I was wondering if you could share some very practical tips on how to make a presentation a bit more enjoyable for your audience, especially when it's a topic, but it's not really easy to find dynamics where your audience will interact or ask questions. Maybe some more serious topics, such as a business update or something pretty dry.
Sure, Max. Now, there are a few things that you can do to make it more enjoyable. I'll just give you one in the interest of time, and then if we've got more time, and if there are no other questions, happy to, if you want to go into a little bit more detail, we can do that as well. The most powerful thing you can do to make your content, your presentations more enjoyable is to tell stories. Now, when I say tell stories, I'm not talking about once upon a time type of stories. A story could be an example, an anecdote. It could be something that happened to you if it's connected to the point that you want to get across. It could be stories about other people, something that happened to someone else. It could be a story of success. I don't know enough about your context, Max, but say, for example, that there is another company or another team or an organization that's already implementing successfully the idea that you are proposing. That's a story. If we think about it, there's always a story to tell. The problem with most business presentations is that they are 99% facts and figures. I'm not saying that this is not important, but it's not enough. If we're lucky, 1% is story. We should turn this around. So tell more stories, and this is the most powerful thing you can do to make your presentations more original and enjoyable. Now, Max, I don't want to take me as an example, but for example, a few minutes ago, I told you the story of Marie, a client who ended up presenting to an audience of blind people. Now, my message there was for you, was an invitation for you to, before you do anything else in preparation for your next presentations, to start with the audience. That was my message. But I know that if that's all I said, most likely a few days from this webinar, you'll forget it. Life gets in the way. And so we go back to the old habits. Whereas now, so I asked myself, okay, what story could I tell that illustrates this point? And now it's going to be more, of course, we can only control what we can control, but it's going to be more likely that a few days from now, you will still remember what happened to Marie, even if you don't remember all the details and the key point connected to it. Because storytelling is not about telling a story for the sake of it. You want to tell a story because it makes a point. And research shows that when you do that, your audience will remember the story and the idea that you want to communicate. I hope that makes sense, Max. Cool. Anything else? Any other questions from anyone?
Maybe, Andrea, a follow-up question on the storytelling. And I'm glad that Max prompted the storytelling, because that was my question. But I would say, is there any other specific principles to the storytelling that we should be aware, or that we should do some research, or what you share with us today, we would also follow for the storytelling? And for me, that's the most difficult part for the storytelling, is how do I do a storytelling in very, very brief moments?
Yeah. Good question, Christina. Now, one thing that comes to mind is that when it comes to, so if we want to get into the specifics of storytelling, one challenge I see that beyond what I've just said, that people don't tell enough stories, but when they do tell a story, whether they are aware of it or not, but they make the story about them, about themselves as the speaker, or their organization, their company, themselves, or the company they work for becomes the hero of the story. And you are not, I'm not talking about you, Christina, but in general, you are not the hero of the story. I'm not the hero of the story. So the key is to always make the audience the hero of the story, or the idea the hero of the story. It's not look at me, look at me, look at me. It's look at that. And a practical framework that you can use to make it more likely that you will not be the hero of the story is 4 parts: setting, complication, turning point, resolution. I will explain it briefly. Then, of course, then we will need to have more time to apply it to a particular case. But at a high level, setting, complication, turning point, resolution. Say, for example, that you want to tell a story of success. Again, you in a presentation, you want to communicate an idea, and you want to tell a story that illustrates how that idea is valuable. Maybe an example of how someone else has used the idea and had success with it. Setting could be as simple as time and place. So if you say, for example, like 3 years ago, we worked with a client in Paris 3 years ago, Paris, time and place. When you start something with time and place, the audience knows that you are about to share a story. It could be as simple as that. Then complication. This is the complication from the perspective of the character of the story. It could be, let's take a client success story, just to give you an example, just to make it practical. If it's a client success story, so a success story from a previous client or another company that you've worked with, that this is the complication that the client or the character of the story was experiencing before they met you or before they started implementing your idea, your solution. And the key is that this is from their perspective, because we are not the hero of the story. So you want to talk about the challenges, the problems that they faced before they started working with us or before they implemented our idea, our solution. Then turning point, the third step, this is the only place in the story where you can talk a little bit about yourself. And what I mean by that is that you can explain, but you want to keep it very, very brief. You want to make it clear that this is how you've helped that particular client or that particular organization, that particular team. Okay, so that's the turning point, how you work together, what you've done with them, how you've helped them. And then in the resolution, which is the final step, again, this is the resolution from the perspective of the client. We are not the hero of the story. This is the resolution from the perspective of the character of the story. This is the success that they have achieved. This is the outcome that they have achieved. Now, of course, if you think about it, Christina, when you do that, if you share a success story of a client or a team, someone or an organization that has successfully implemented the idea that you want to communicate in this particular presentation, then if you do it this way, you are not the hero of the story, but indirectly, the people in the audience will, of course, make the connection that they will think that if this other person or if this other team or if this other organization he's having success with your idea, of course, it's thanks to you. It's thanks to your idea. It's thanks to your proposal, your solution, but you are doing that in a much more human and elegant way. So again, I hope that makes sense, at least at a very high level.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. Anything else? Otherwise, no one has ever complained if a webinar finishes a little bit earlier than planned. If there are questions, happy, we've got a few more minutes of the use of the Hero Journal. Okay, perfect. All right, in that case, if there's one thing I would really like you to take away from this session is that if you think about it, any difficulty in your businesses, in your roles, in your careers can be traced back to a communication deficiency, a bit of a lack of communication skills. For example, if your business is not growing, then for sure there's a communication deficiency. If you are finding it hard to lead your teams or motivate them to do what you want them to do, there's a communication deficiency. If you are struggling to make an impact for causes or projects you care about, there's a communication deficiency. Any difficulty in your business, in your roles, in your careers boils down to a communication deficiency. So if you think that that might be the case in your situation or in your company, that you need to be intentional about what you're going to do about it and when. Because you see, many people attend sessions like this, and then what do? Nothing. Or if it goes well, they procrastinate. They think that now is not the right time, so they'll wait for the perfect time. The truth is, there will never be a perfect time. The perfect time to start your journey to becoming the best presenters you can be is now. Mastering the art of public speaking can be rewarding. It is rewarding, but there's no reward without action. So again, if this speaks to you, here is my invitation to you. Start or continue your journey now. Start your journey to becoming the best presenters you can be today, not tomorrow. Start your journey to becoming the best version of yourselves as communicators today, not tomorrow. Now, of course, if you do want to, if you'd like to start that journey, then I'd love for you to share with us. And the best way to do that, if you haven't done it yet, again, if you're interested, feel free to express your interest in the complimentary consultation I mentioned. Type 1-to-1 in the chat if you haven't done it. If you've started that journey already, that's great. Keep going, you won't regret it, and your audience will thank you. And I also want to thank you very much, Sarah, Christina, Josie, Max. Thank you very much. I do hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you found it useful. Let's keep in touch. All the very best. Ciao.
Thanks, Andrea.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.